Hey, vegan cyclists. So this is Racecast episode 6. We've got the tour down under, this little prologue that's going to be going in the background. And I've got Jackson Long from Give It To Me.
Thought for Food.
Thought for Food
Thought for Food
podcast.
Lifestyle. Yeah, Thought for Food podcast, Thought for Food TV on YouTube, TFF Lifestyle. Yeah, should I just maybe give a little bit about myself to introduce?
Yeah, absolutely. What is your first of all, this Racecast is going to be about amateurs versus pros and sort of the difference that that entails. So we're going to watch this pro race together. We're going to watch the first little People's Choice Tour down under. Give a little bit of commentary on the race itself, but for the most part, we're talking about the difference between pro cyclists, like World Tour cyclists, and amateur level cyclists. So Jackson, like, what are your credentials as a cyclist?
Yeah, so I grew up racing from the age of 12, and I raced as a junior. And the last couple of years racing as a junior, I was racing internationally, not with the national team, but I did a trip to Belgium for a month to race in like the kermesses, they're called. I did a couple like UCI interclub races, and then my final year as a junior, I did the Junior Tour of Ireland with the Team Specialized team, which is actually kind of based out of your neck of the woods, up in the northern part of California. And then I moved out to Boulder, Colorado, where I live right now, and upgraded to a Cat 1, raced as a Cat 1 for 2.5 years, as well as raced for the University of Colorado, Colorado Boulder, which is where I went to school. And I raced for the Horizon Einstein Brothers Bagels cycling team, which we were the #1 ranked amateur team in the country in 2014. And so I raced that, did that whole scene, and then I got just a little bit burned out on cycling, racing scene wise, and sort of wanted to come back to just enjoying riding. So I'm sort of on a hiatus from racing at the moment, but I still follow the sport, love it, still ride a lot. So that's kind of it for racing and bikes.
Dang, man, that's legit. So you raced with the Specialized guys? Did you know Jack Maddox?
Yeah, that name sounds familiar. He was I think a few years younger than me, and I was just guest riding for that team. So I was just it was a composite team that was put together by, I don't know if you know Craig Romer. He's sort of like a masters racer now. But yeah, we sort of had a composite team. Some of the guys on there, Marcus Smith. I think there was a few other guys I can't quite remember, but yeah. So we put together a team for this 8-day stage race, and we got a couple wins. I was 10th in the opening time trial, and it was a great time, great race, and yeah, I mean, I loved that experience of racing overseas. It's just such a different race environment than the U.S. is, and it just really helped to develop me as a rider. And then it sort of brought me into racing at the highest amateur level in the U.S. as well.
Dang, bro, that's crazy. That's legit stuff. So what was your we're going to kind of talk about this like difference between pros and amateurs, but what was your best like power numbers? Give me your watt stats.
Yeah, so I mean, probably my best ever, I mean, I guess if we want to, there's a lot that goes into it. It's not just about watts, right? But I mean, I think my best like 20-minute power was like 330 watts, and I weighed about 135 to 145 pounds ish. So that's kind of up there, upper 5 watt per kilo. So yeah, I mean, I could climb pretty well. That was sort of my specialty, and but yeah, I mean, nothing phenomenal. I mean, and that's something that I think we should talk about at some point today, is that it's not just about your watt numbers at all. And so sure, they're important, and it's a great metric for training and racing and improving, but there is just so much more to bike racing than watts. And so, yeah, I mean, I was definitely super strong and super fit, but I was really also focused on learning about the other aspects of the sport, like tactics and strategy and teamwork and these things that can really play into the favor of not necessarily the strongest rider.
For sure. And that's, man, cycling is so cool because of that. That I would say oftentimes the strongest rider doesn't necessarily win. Almost to the point that sometimes the strongest rider is at a disadvantage because if people know he's strong, and you could see this with Peter Sagan, 2 years ago after he kind of jumped onto the scene, everyone's just said, hey, that's the dude to watch. And so then no one gave him any leash, right?
Right.
At all. His like didn't matter what tactics he used, no one would let him go anywhere.
Yeah, he
And
just has a
so
giant target on his back because he's
yeah.
the world champion. He's, just crushing it. And so,
Well,
yeah,
before he got to be world champion, after a huge tour of California, I think when he was still on Cannondale, right? He just he couldn't do anything, and so then everyone was like, "Oh, is he not really the real deal? Is whatever? He can't really win much." And what was so crazy and what's so cool about the Sagan man is that dude, he never seemed to get frustrated. Like in all the interviews, maybe he just doesn't speak English that well, but they ask him, hey, you sucked again. Why? And he just says, today is a race, tomorrow's a race. We look
yeah,
forward to tomorrow. And it's like, oh man, like I wish I was that calm and that chill. But dude, it was just so crazy. There were so many times where he was left in this position of, he has to chase this breakdown by himself because no one else is going to do that. But if he does that chase, then everyone goes with him, and he's just burning matches all day long. And so, like back to your point, is just because you have the most massive motor in the world, if you don't use the tactics right, and then so the other way, the vice versa would be you don't necessarily have to have the biggest motor, to play your cards at the right time. Man, is huge. And so, what would you say is the gradient between your beginner Cat 5 and then your World Tour Pro? At what point do you start to phase into those tactics? Because your Cat 5 tactics are much different than your World Tour Pro tactics.
right. And I mean, there's not that many. I guess. I guess there's not that. Like just suddenly you just go from like racing, in the amateur level, and then you just hit world tour, and it's like completely different. I mean, a lot of the same, fundamentals are still there. The drafting and the teamwork and the positioning and the saving your matches. It's all there. But when you're a Cat 5, obviously you are probably not racing with a team. There's not you're not really in that team structure. And so a lot of these world tour guys and even domestic pros and elite amateurs have really gelled teams. So like their teams, they work heavily on tactics. They do training camps. They practice their lead out train extensively. And those are the things that really separate the world tour from the domestic kind of amateur circuit, because I mean, we see it, in Cat 4, even Cat 3 races. A lot of times it is the strongest guy that wins because the experience of the riders aren't quite there. I have a friend that upgraded from like a Cat 4 to a Cat 1 in one season just because he was so strong that he could just quickly rise up through the ranks without necessarily having that those 5 years, 10 years of experience that a lot of these guys have. And so I think the key factor there is yeah, that really solid team structure and just the experience. Because I mean, it's sort of hard to perceive a lot of times these racers like Peter Sagan or Chris Froome, but they all started at the same exact place that we all did, and they all had to go through that process of learning how to position yourself in the pack, or even learn how to feel comfortable in the pack. And you just progress through. You get the experience. You just put in the time, and I think that's almost even more important than the actual training and numbers and power and stuff like that. Is to to really get a feel and a sense for being savvy within the pack, being aware of what's going on around you, and how to sort of deliver team tactics.
Yeah, but so here's the thing: is while I'm watching this, you can see how strung out these guys are, and the sheer road between amount of road between the back of the pack and the front of the pack is just massive, especially when the gas is on, right? And so, your typical Cat 4, Cat 3, even your like smaller field P12, if there's 20 guys in that group, man, your chances of getting dropped are so much greater, because when you need to like recover, you can't fall back through the pack as much, right? So for here, the guy on the front, when he drills it, if he wanted to stop right now, I mean, he could just full on stop pedaling for maybe, I don't know, 30 seconds to a minute before he's all the way to the back, right? And so when you have these much bigger groups, the dynamics totally change. And so, but also to that is that when the speed is what it is. So in most of my like smaller P12 races, I can attack every lap, right? I can attack. So I just did a little crit practice, and I think there was one point where I attacked every single lap for like 3 or 4 laps. And when I get caught, no big deal. I'm able to just get back onto the pack, because the pack is rolling at maybe 23 to 25 miles an hour, which is not hard to be in when you're sitting in. But when I did the Snelling road race and there was a bunch of domestic pro teams, man, I went with a move and it was everything I had. I mean, I was just so in the red to go with this break. And as soon as the break got caught, the pace of the group was 30 miles an hour, 31 miles an hour. And so it's so difficult because you're redlined, and then you don't really have a whole lot of time to just sit in and relax when the speed is so high.
Yeah. Right.
So you kind of have to gauge that with, how fast is your group going? How big is your group going? Because
and I think a key thing to note here with this thing is like, yeah, it's easy to just kind of to sort of soft pedal and go back in the field, but once you're back there, it's near impossible to get back up to the front because of the how fast these guys are going. And in order to move up, you have to kind of put yourself out in the wind a lot of times to move up, and you have to go exponentially faster than the rest of the guys. And so positioning again is critical, and something like this is basically a criterium. And so a key thing here is that positioning from the beginning. And if you're riding in the top 20, you can just kind of chill in that zone. And that's like it's like even its own little field within there, because those are the guys that are really going for it at the beginning. It's probably a lot of the sort of domestiques within the team that are basically workhorses to be launched off into breaks, into small groups to just and push the pace too. A lot of the guys that are in contention for especially the overall, but even for the stage, are probably sitting back a little bit further in that top 20, especially this early on in the race. And so the same thing can be said even in Pro and 2 races, probably to a lesser extent in some of the Cat 4-5 races. But once you sort of burn a match and you kind of drift back, you want to be careful about doing that too much, because you do have to sort of work, unless you are really fluid and savvy at moving up within the field. You can get pretty exhausted doing that like over and over.
Right. So right here, this dude FDG guy, he's going hard, and then look, and so then now all of a sudden everyone starts going, because for a minute there, everyone fanned out and was like, okay, we'll let these two dudes go, because there's only 2 of them. And, those 2 teams aren't really, I don't know, doesn't really seem like they're going to be going for the win. And so when you're, say, a Cat 5, Cat 4, you watch this race and go, oh, look how easy it is to be in a break. That looks fun. I want to do that. But it's the group let them go.
Right.
It's not that they just are,
That
that
much
much
stronger.
better,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the group just said, okay, that's fine. You can go. You're gonna blow up. We'll catch you. So, you can go play. But then what's funny is, and this happens, this is so frustrating, is you'll be the guy in the break. One guy goes, I want to be in that break. So then tries to jump. But then that's now a 3-man break. So now it's a little more threatening. And then so maybe one more guy tries to go and go and go and go and go. And then all of a sudden you just fill in that space. It's not really that they chased it down. It's just so many guys filled in that vacant space. And then now, if you were just sitting on the back, like if you were being Peter Sagan and just chilling, you had to do zero work to close that down, but it's already closed down.
Yeah,
Right.
and that
So
and
now,
that kind of goes into the tactics and strategy. Is like these guys have special people within the team that's their job is to cover moves, chase down breakaways and attacks, and get into the breakaway and attacks. Because if you're Peter Sagan and you're on Bora and you have one of your teammates jumping into the breakaway, you have no responsibility to chase on the front, and so your team gets to save a lot of energy by just kind of cruising, because they'll look at the other teams and be like, guys, you don't have anyone in the break. These guys are up the road. You need to chase. I'm sorry, we're not going to chase.
yeah, but so right now, they have a pretty good sized gap, but this is like rare to have something like this in a amateur level race. Just because everyone, whenever they see someone attack, they feel like they have to go, right? And so it's pretty rare sometimes to get a 2-man break, especially, what is this, lap 4?
Yeah.
Dude, I mean, that's so rare to get a from the gun break or whatever. For the most part in the P12s, my experience anyways, is the breaks come from just the absolute exhaustion of, I cannot cover one more attack.
Yeah.
Right? There's been 30 attacks, and then it's just like, okay, whatever, go.
And so
I
see,
can't deal with this.
so I see it a little bit. I see it a little bit differently, actually. I think that this is a pretty kind of standard move for this level of racing in a lot of ways, just because, at the World Tour level, this is a long race. They're on lap 5 of 22, and this is a pretty safe break for the main field. There's a Garmin guy there. There's a Dimension Data guy there. Two of the big teams are represented. It sort of makes the race a lot easier to control for the main field by letting those guys dangle out front at a manageable distance. They can just kind of chill, regroup, work on their strategy that they've implemented beforehand. And I mean, you do start to see this level of strategy working at the Pro and 2 level for sure in some of the bigger races. Like maybe Redlands Classic or Cascade or some of these bigger NRC races, where it's like, okay, these guys are happy with this. The other teams, maybe they just don't want someone this early in the break. They're just going to let them go, and then they're going to sort of save it, and then they can reel them in at the right time. And I mean, I haven't watched this race yet, so I don't know how it's going to evolve in terms of this break, but I think that's not something that you see in an amateur race most of the time, though.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. In a pro level, having a breakaway go from the gun is almost like mandatory.
Yeah.
Right. It is, even though when you do watch the Tour de France live, it's like surprising because of how much action actually goes on in the first 20 or 30 minutes that they never show. They never broadcast that.
Yeah.
But it's just like, oh my goodness, there's been so many attacks to establish that. But for a lot of times, they'll just let him go because, like you said, it does allow for the whole pace to sort of slow down. And then, there are certain teams like Caleb Ewan's team, right? If his guy's not in the break, they don't have a guy in the break, that their whole team's going to go to the front and absolutely drill it to bring that break back because, well, they're not going to just let Caleb, waste, right? It costs a lot of money to have him on the team. And so in amateur racing, That's not necessarily the case. And so it's a little bit difficult to get, these type of scenarios to play out.
Right.
And I think that that's kind of the whole idea of this podcast, right? Is those differences when, as an amateur, you see, I think it paused on its own because it's playing still over here. So when you get these scenarios in pro racing, so then you try to replicate them in amateur racing, I think that sometimes that's a big mistake, right? Like, let the pros do what the pros do and try to emulate them to a certain point. But for, like, what would your main advice be to like a first time racer, someone who's just starting to get into this, that
what do you mean? Like just in terms of the tactics?
Yeah, like how much tactics should you play, or at what, like, where's, again, that the kind of the original question is the gradient of, do I attack on lap one? Do I try to get into a break? What is the difference between a Cat 4 or Cat 5 guy trying to get into a break, and what's the odds of them succeeding versus these guys?
Yeah, well, I think it's also important to not overthink it, and one of the biggest things that I recommend to people that are new to racing is just try a bunch of different shit. I don't know, am I allowed to swear on this?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah, just try different shit, and just be open to failure, because the best way to learn is to fail. And so go to one race and just attack like crazy until you blow up and get dropped. Like, it's not a big deal. It's a Cat 4 race. You're not Peter Sagan going for the world championships. And that way you learn, like, okay, this attack at this point in the race from this far back in the field with, this sort of situation going up on the road, this works or this doesn't work. And that's really the best way to learn about racing. I feel like a lot of amateur racers, even in the Cat 1-2 level, is that people are just afraid. They have this fear of trying things and kind of going out on a limb. And I mean, you see guys in the World Tour even doing that. They go on really ballsy, long, huge breakaways, solo breakaways. I mean, I interviewed Lachlan Morton for my podcast, which will be coming out in the next few weeks, and he was kind of recapping his huge win at the Tour of Utah this past year, where he had to reclaim the yellow jersey by like a few seconds and on the last day. And so in order to do that, he launched a completely ballsy sort of YOLO breakaway like halfway through the stage and nailed it. He just pinned it and won the stage, won the overall. And not a lot of people have the guts to do that. And so I think in order to get that confidence, you have to do that kind of thing a lot as you progress through the ranks.
Yeah, but talk about that a little more, because so when someone makes this flyer,
well, and it doesn't just apply to attacks and breakaways. I mean, it's also trying to work with other riders in a breakaway, or try different sort of like I guess just positioning. Like, positioning is such a huge thing. Do you ride on the outside so that if someone does attack, you can jump quickly on their wheel? Do you ride on the inside so you can hug the corners a little bit better?
Yeah, but I mean, when someone goes and they do this huge solo effort to make it to the finish, usually it's not that they rode absolutely 100% and the pack was riding 100% and they were just that much better. A lot of times the pack just kind of messed around or misgauged or was not united. But that's where, taking those chances, you're never going to get that if you don't take the chances.
Exactly.
And I was in a stage race. It's kind of a smaller stage race, but so there was three stages, and the first one was a road race, and I think it was like 6 laps around this. It was like 70 miles or 80 miles. And about 10 miles in, I attacked and I got 2 guys to go with me. And then 2 guys bridged. And dude, we got a 2-minute gap on the field and then just held it all the way to the finish.
Yeah.
And, but it wasn't that the group was pinned, it wasn't that they were chasing us the whole time. They just thought, oh, what are they going to do? It's such a long race, right? It's 70 miles left in this race. They're not going to make it. And so then everyone just kind of sat back and went, oh, we'll catch them. But then they just never did. They never. And so after the race, it was so funny because you're talking to the guys in the group and they're just saying, man, no one would pull. Like you would get one guy to attack and then everyone would be on his wheel. And then he's like, well, I'm not going to just blow myself up here. And no one would unite. No one would come together. And then so it was just over. The stage race was over, stage one, because there's no way you're going to make up 2 minutes on us pretty much with a small 10-mile TT and then, circuit race, which is funny, though. In the TT, they added a minute to my time.
Huh.
And I think they even added 2 minutes. And so I was like, whoa, there's no way that my Garmin showed that I did, I think, 24 minutes or something. But then when they posted the results, it was like 26 minutes. And then it moved me from, I want to say, second overall on the stage or on the race to like ninth.
Huh.
And so I was like frantically trying to get him to fix it. And dude, it was just such a debacle. And they're like, no, like this is it. And then so I had to show them that the guy who started in front of me, I passed him, and yet he was 2 minutes faster than me. Right. I was like, that's mathematically impossible.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got them to fix it. But it's just, again, it was sort of the luck of the draw on that. And a lot of times they'll chase you down, but sometimes they don't. And that's awesome.
Yeah.
But,
and I think that's kind of a key piece of, or a key difference between the pros and the amateurs is, in the World Tour, a lot of these races, you get race radios and you have really dialed teams that know how to calculate exactly when to start really chasing to reel in the breakaway right before the finish, especially if it's a flat stage. Whereas in amateurs, you don't have radios, and so a lot of these teams just are like, oh yeah, like they'll die, we'll catch them soon, and there's no real organization. And then by the time sometimes they do start to organize, it's already too late. And that is if there even is like a full dialed team in there,
Now explain what's kind of going on right here. And if you're only listening to this podcast, we're watching the People's Choice crit from the Tour Downer of 2017. But so that dude in the black that's on that guy's wheel, he has a dude up the road. So he's got a teammate up the road, and so
wait, no, aren't these guys the leaders?
I think they're the chase.
Okay,
they're the.
Oh yeah, because there's the Garmin and the other guy. Yeah.
No, I think the Garmin dudes, they got caught, and so they were just showing a clip of what's the team like. So that's Lotto, the team right behind him.
Is Dimension Data.
Okay, Dimension Data has a guy further up the road. So there's Dimension Data up the road, solo, and then those two dudes. So then Dimension Data is on that Lotto dude's wheel,
and he doesn't have to work.
Yeah. So why even go with them?
So because if this breakaway stays away, if the guy in the very front, the solo guy, and these two guys bridge,
there he is right there.
Yeah. Now I get it. So if the two chasers catch the solo guy, the second Dimension Data guy doesn't have to work. So it's just all up to the Lotto guy. That Lotto guy is just turning himself inside out right now to try and catch this guy. But it plays into Dimension Data's advantage because if they do catch him, I mean they have a pretty good gap there. But if they catch him, that puts a 2-to-1 odds in favor, and those two Dimension Data guys can work together really seamlessly to to push forward and work, and so they don't have to mess around. And it also sets up their team, whoever their designated leader is, if they're back there. I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing. I don't know who their sprinter is, but anyway. So if there's the three of them and they get together, then those two Dimension Data guys have a serious advantage, and the Dimension Data team back in the field can just sit back and chill and let the other teams burn their guys. Is basically the essence of that.
And so, I sometimes battle with this because that guy, like, dude, if you have a teammate up the road and then you see another guy going to chase, getting on that guy's wheel is, a free, you're going to get a free ride. But sometimes, and so that might work in the top level pros, but sometimes in the amateurs, when they might let one guy go, but they might not let two guys go, especially if they know that your teammate is up the road. So to see now two teammates about to form, guys will chase you down. Yeah. And so I think sometimes it's better to let one or two guys go up the road and join your teammate to maybe make that be a much more strengthened breakaway, and a breakaway that people aren't going to want to chase down immediately.
Yeah.
And so a tactic that you can use as an amateur that I feel like no one ever uses, and the crit that I was doing Sunday, guys were chasing down their own teammates.
Yeah.
And don't do that. Don't chase down your own teammates. And so it's so frustrating because I was attacking to get into a breakaway, and I'd get into a breakaway that had, two of the dominant teams, and then I'd look back and those two teams are chasing.
Yeah.
And then they'd get on the wheel, and I was so the guy Jamin was with me, and then it was Jamin who was on Fulton, myself, and then Alex, who was also on Fulton. And so I'm telling Alex, I'm like, dude, let us go, drop off. We're strung out, like open up a gap, let us go off the front. And then he's like, yeah, good job. And I'm like, no, let us go. And he thought I was saying like good job or like way to go.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, man, let us go. and so there are times where, man, if it's strung out, it's going pretty fast, and you're on the wheel of your teammate or your teammate's like a couple wheels up, if you just start soft pedaling and not stop pedaling, because then people will come around you, but open up that gap a little bit, dude, you can be the catalyst to creating that break, and then you give your teammate a chance, for a win, and then all of a sudden now your responsibility for this race is nil, right? Yeah. You don't have to do anything. So now you can just kind of let that gap open up, fall through the pack, and then just chill while everyone else chases. And as soon as they catch them, then you can be fresh as a daisy and then make that counter. Yeah. And then if you and your teammates are on like the same page. But so talk about maybe within your experience, why do amateur guys not work so well as a team? Why, when you have 8 or 9 teammates in a race, do they just not work well together? When in the pros you see it, they work flawlessly together.
Yeah, well, and I think that's another key thing is just that experience. I mean, these guys have so much experience, and there is a lot of finesse to deciding to chase down your own teammate. I didn't see those two guys pop off the front, but I'm guessing what happened is that Lotto guy jumped to try and make the bridge, and the other Dimension Data guy was just around him and just like, oh, I'm just gonna pop on his wheel, because there is that advantage, and yeah, it's risky, but there is that advantage to having two guys in the break, and you have 2-to-1 odds there. But I think in terms of amateur racing, chasing down your own teammates, I think it's just a little bit of lack of experience and understanding that there are some benefits to chasing down your teammates in the right circumstances. Like if it's late in the race and you are the designated leader, and you want to be up the road, it can serve you well to make that bridge so that you have a teammate already up the road to help you in the final stages. Obviously, we're not even halfway through this race right now. But yeah, and so I think it's just that it comes down to experience. It comes down to reading the race, reading the situation. I mean, if you have a teammate up the road, it's probably smart to just pop on and get a free ride and not work, because then you get a free ride up the road. You can help that other guy out, and you also force that, in this case, the Lotto guy to really burn a serious match there, and burn one of his guys, and you just get to cruise up there. I mean, obviously, it's not just cruising; they're both going really hard, but I think you just have to. You have to understand the dynamics of racing, and it's just it's just so fluid, and there's always different ways to approach a situation, and who knows, these guys might just be kind of testing different things out.
Yeah, but like, maybe talk about how it's okay to not win a race if your teammate does well, right? And in an on an amateur level, we just all feel like, and I remember feeling this way. I'd see my teammate up in a break, then it looks like it's going to win, and I kind of get bummed. I'm like, dude, like, I wanted a chance to win. Like, it's hard as a Cat 5 or 4, 3. I mean, even whatever. It's hard, period. You go to a race and you want to win, because the weirdest thing about cycling is it's an individual team sport.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's all it's all individual, but then it's also a team. So, we all want to win. But having team dynamics makes it all so much more fun and worth it. And so what can a beginner racer do that's on maybe a decent sized team? He has 2 or 3 teammates. What can they do to try to, like, get on the same page and work together and have that sort of camaraderie? Do they ride often together? Do they race together? Like, do they have a Facebook chat and talk about tactics? Like, how can they come together and meld as like one?
Yeah, I think all of the above, and the perhaps the most important part of racing in a team race, like a criterium or a road race, is communication. And an example for me, when I was racing for the Horizon team, I was the youngest guy on the team. I was sort of new to the Cat 1, like NRC circuit, and so my role in the team was very clear. I was like essentially a domestique. I was just working for the team. I would go back to the caravan, get bottles, and bring them up to the leaders, and so having a really clear strategy in place before you even start the race can really set you off as an advantage. And I think, like, even a lot of Cat 4s and 5s kind of neglect this, and you can kind of use it as a hack because not a lot of Cat 4 5s use it. So if you are a Cat 4 5, even a Cat 3, and you have a team, or at least a few teammates, sit down before the race for 15, 20 minutes and say, okay, how's everyone feeling? Today I'm feeling super fresh. In warm-up, I was feeling really, my legs felt amazing. I feel like I want to go for this. And if the other teammates are in support of that, they say, great, we're going to support you in that. And then you also have to be open to making changes on the fly. Sometimes you start out feeling amazing in the race, and you just kind of start to die. And so you go and you go up to one of your teammates and say, guys, my legs are shit. I'm going to help you guys, go for this. And so you sort of have to be constantly talking with your teammates in the race. And, that can be hard at first. It can be, that's something that you have to learn, but, there's very distinct roles. I mean, not every, if when you're watching this World Tour race, not all of these guys are trying to win the race. Only a few guys, maybe 10 guys are actually going to try and win this race, and the rest of them are in support of those 10 people.
Dude, isn't that the craziest thing? I would say that that's probably, in a nutshell, if you were to say what's the biggest difference between amateurs and World Tour pros, it's that an amateur race with 20 guys is probably more competitive I would say, not in like speed, but like there's more guys contesting for the finish than in the Tour de France.
Yeah.
Right? It's 200 guys on the start line in the Tour de France, and depending on the stage, there may only be 3 guys that are actually racing.
Right.
And that's crazy. And so that's I think a really big difference. When you watch these races and then you want to emulate that on your local club ride or whatever.
Yeah, because these races, like the World Tour races like this, it's actually extremely controlled. Like, it is so controlled and so smooth at all times, even though it might not look like it. But go to any Cat 4-5 race, even Cat 3, even Pro 1-2 races, it can be a massive clusterfuck at times. Like, it gets out of control. People are constantly attacking, and the field gets strung out, and like splits form, and it's because a lot of times people are racing just as individuals, even if they have teammates, and so it kind of like messes everything up.
For sure. Now, you had kind of talked about this a while back, where you said positioning, and so if you've never rode a race with 100 guys, positioning is almost another sport.
Yeah.
It is you can race for 3 hours. You could be racing your bike for 3 hours, and the only thing you're trying to do is move up in position. And it's hard to tell, but you can see right here.
It's a good example right here.
Yeah, like look, I mean, if you are the lotto guy in the very bottom in yellow, okay, get to the front. How? You know what I mean? Like, where are you going to go? Right? Every piece is being filled by somebody. And so I think that, dude, Peter Song is so cool.
Such a baller. Such a baller.
So dope. So, the thing is, when you are in that pack and you're like shoulder to shoulder, everyone wants to be in the top 20. But then that's what's really weird. No one wants to be on the front. So then you get this really weird kind of like almost like recycling thing where the guys in the front sort of go to the back, but then they don't want to go too far to the back, and they just kind of keep this little whirlpool going.
It's called the washing machine, man.
There you go. And but the guys in the back, want to get up to the front. And so one of the fastest crits I've done was San Rafael 2 years ago, and it's a really it's like half a mile crit, right? Or it maybe just over half a mile. So it's such a short little crit, and depending on the pace and how many guys, it's like the front of the pack is, you can see the tail end of the pack at one point, right? So the front is coming in on the last turn, and the back of the pack is leaving the first turn.
Yeah.
So it's like so crazy. And so, but the speeds are so fast and the course is so skinny, and everyone's trying to move up that, okay, well, I have to go out in the wind. I've got to make this huge effort. We're already going 30 miles an hour, 31 miles an hour. So now I got to go 32 miles an hour to move up one position. But then that guy's not going to just go, oh yeah, sure, go in. Right. So then you get caught outside, and then you got to like make these risky moves and like barge your way in. But then once you've moved up to the front, you're redlined. You're just blown to pieces. So then what do? You fall back to the back. And man, positioning is just the craziest. It's the craziest thing. And if you've never experienced it, it's hard to tell you. But it's like, what in your experience, like tell me about like one of these crazy tours you've done where you're just buried in the pack.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to, first, here's a great example. You see this team, and I can't exactly tell what team it is, but all these guys in red, since they are a really cohesive team, they can just roll as one unit, and that allows for this is just an example of the World Tour, obviously, in this, but I've experienced this myself within my team in Pro 1-2 races, but if you are really dominant in the race, or not even dominant, but at least cohesive, and you're in the group of your team. So like, let's say, my team, we had 7 to 8 guys in a race. We would just flow around the pack. It's the Segafredo Trek team. But see how they're all sort of bunched up together? That makes it infinitely more easy to move up, because you are like your own little mini peloton within the peloton. You can sort of shift around. You have more play. You have more dominance, and that is a great way to move up. I mean, that was just a cool example that right there as we were talking about it. But going back, it kind of goes back to that. That positioning is you don't have to. You're not, the strongest rider could be terrible at positioning and will lose the race, even if he is way stronger than everyone else, because you waste so much energy by having poor positioning. You get out in the wind all the time, and you make huge efforts and you burn a bunch of matches to try and move up. And so that is such a important skill to learn, and whether it's in kind of early, like, different kinds of clinics to just learn how to ride in a pack, doing group rides, doing practice crits, doing lots of races where your main focus of the race is just to move around the pack and feel it. And it's very physical. I mean, when you're moving up, a lot of times you stick your hand out, you touch another guy's butt, and you just let him know you're there. Sometimes he'll let you in, sometimes he won't. But these guys that are kind of in this, upper third of the field, a lot of them are just chilling, and they don't really, right now they're not chasing super hard. So a lot of times they don't really care. Like they'll let you in. But yeah, it all comes down to, being as efficient as possible. And
for sure. And touching a guy's butt is something that I really want to do a video on, because it is it's honestly something that will save you when there's a very small little gap and you want to move up. You just kind of put your hand on like their hip, and it's so crazy how much control you have over that person now.
Oh yeah.
Right? Dude, you can just push them aside and then move up.
But not aggressively. It's not aggressive. It's like just a tap, like, hey, I'm coming up, I'm in your blind spot, bro. I'm coming up, just letting you know. And it can get really dicey, especially in the sprint, but yeah, the last thing you want to do is just kind of like dive in there with your bars and get right up in there, because
especially if the speed is different, right? So the guys up front that are just kind of soft pedaling on their hoods, if you start coming up the right side, you just kind of want to touch them and stop them from moving over. But I was not at this race that this happened, but it was to my teammate, this guy John DeVere, who, dude, he's like 50 something, and he is so strong. I mean, just like a massive time trialist, like one of the greatest riders. I want to say he was a state champion at one point in his age group. Anyway, he was doing a small, maybe 12 guys in the race, and someone was trying to go up the left side and grabbed this dude's hip and like pulled him back, like almost like slingshotted himself up the side, and then it twisted the guy, and he went down and crashed into my teammate, this guy John DeVere, and he punctured his lung and had to get hella flighted out to a hospital, and he almost died. Like, I want to say he flatlined, actually.
Oh shit.
And it was just like, now he's done. He won't cycle anymore. And honestly, like 3 other people that he was close to stopped cycling because of that. And it was just all because one dude tried to push someone out of the way because they see it on the pros, right? And so this kind of just loops us back to like, what's the difference between amateurs and pros is, man, sometimes the pros can touch other guys at 30 miles an hour. But like they have so much experience and they know what they're doing. And so to emulate that, man, maybe that's not what you do. To lighten up the story a little bit, I had another teammate, and I'm going to put him on blast, Ryan Brooks. He tried to, so he was in a breakaway, for sure going to win this breakaway, right? Or like the breakaway is going to succeed. And as they were cycling through, a guy was starting to fall off the brake. And so he pushed him back up into the brake to give him a little boost. And while he was pushing him back up, his bars got twisted and he ate shit. And he crashed out of the brake. And it's like, for one, why are you trying to help a guy get back on the brake? That's not your teammate. But so
but it's more strength in numbers, if you know.
Yeah, definitely. But the brake was, anyway, he again puts his hand on this other guy and tries to do something that you see the pros do. And if you're just not comfortable with how that reacts, like how touching someone and how your body or bike will react when coming in contact with someone else at high speed, if you don't know how to do that, like, so work your way into that practice.
Yeah.
There are times where, if you're on a group ride, just grabbing someone's back and kind of like feeling how that feels, or looking behind you, or you do something in a controlled, like, relaxed environment. Maybe that's the way to start. But
Yeah, and I guess maybe I sort of misspoke in that situation, but definitely if you're like a Cat 4 or 5, I would not take your hands off the bars in the race, especially if you're going fast. But yeah, like, you want to get a grip of your bike handling skills before you start taking your hands off the bars in the middle of a race. In a lot of these, even in the World Tour, it's in the last, K of the race or 500 meters of the race. I think it's actually legal to take your hands off the bars, just because it can be so dangerous. And so, yeah, you have to just really get a sense for that. And that comes with group rides and clinics and stuff, and just sort of feeling how it feels to move around the pack, without touching people. And then, by finding bigger gaps, by riding up the outside, and you can also just use your words. I know that sounds goofy, but you can yell at people, not maliciously. I don't condone that kind of behavior, but just shout, say, hey, coming up on the left side, or hey, coming up on the right, on your right. It's simple stuff, but it makes a huge difference, rather than just going in at full blast and then expecting them to just know you're there or move.
Absolutely. So when you're in the middle of that group there, what's that feel like? Like, how do you keep calm going 30 miles an hour at 160 beats per minute, and you have nowhere to go? Like, you can't slow down, really. You can't go left or right. What does it feel like to be in a group that big?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, and it's exhilarating, because you're flying along, and you're like sort of within this, you see the shot of the peloton from like the air. It looks like this big mass, and it's like one kind of unit. And so when you're part of that, it's like a flock of birds almost. You're sort of part of that, and it's really cool. But yeah, sometimes you literally can't move, and so it's kind of a little bit claustrophobic. And so I think a key thing there is to kind of make yourself a little bit bigger, to give yourself a little bit more space. Stick out your elbows, kind of hold your stance and hold your position confidently, and that way you'll feel a little bit more comfortable. But at the same time, you also, the scariest part is doing that and going through corners, because you have to be really comfortable and confident in holding your line through that corner, so you don't drift into people and crash. And so it's just, a lot of that comes with experience, and that's just the bottom line, is it just comes with doing it, practicing it, getting comfortable with it, and then just doing it over and over.
So we did, I was a mentor at this clinic on Sunday, and what we would do is we started going single file through the turns, then double wide through the turns, and then triple wide through the turns, is to give someone that sort of experience of being in between, having someone on their left, someone on their right, and then they have to hold their apex, because you can't be sketchy in the turn when you've got a guy on your left and a guy on your right. And also the guy on the left has to kind of accelerate, right? Because the guy on the left, if you're going on a right turn, the guy on the left is having to cover more distance than the guy on the right. And so trying to stay as like one little unit and differing that acceleration, it was a neat drill. And honestly, as someone who's maybe just starting out, or even if you don't race, getting a few of your friends together and finding like a little parking lot. There's this church that I did 2 races at, and just around the church was this little road. I mean, it was no speed bumps. It wasn't a parking lot. It was like a legit little road. And I would go there and kind of practice crit stuff, I mean, darting into the turns. And if you can find something like that, do a few laps with a bunch of guys where you're kind of just in that group. And I don't know, man, increasing your confidence, even if you don't race, is just a great thing to make sure you stay safe on the road.
Yeah.
So now, 17 laps out of 22, that dude is off the front. I would say that in any amateur race, winner, winner, tofu dinner.
Yeah.
That guy's done. I mean, it's over with, right? There's no way an amateur group is going to cover that kind of distance in such short time, just because they're not going to have these crazy lead outs that get up to 40 miles an hour. But I think that if anyone's ever watched a pro race, you kind of know that dude's definitely not going to make it. So what? Give me, I guess, some insight into what that guy is having to do power wise or heart rate wise or energy wise to have stayed out in front for so long with so many bridge attempts and this pack that is just barreling. Like, what's he going through right now?
Yes, I mean he's basically riding a time trial. So he's just, basically at his limit that he can sustain for, a max of an hour or maybe a little bit less, because he hasn't been out there for an hour. But this is why we train, that threshold power, because it allows you to sustain a long effort at a high power output. And so this guy, he is in full time trial mode. You can see him when the camera goes to him. He's in, he's in a sort of aero tuck, not right now.
That's so funny. Right, you call it right when the camera's going to go, and he's as upright as possible.
Yeah. So yeah, when he's doing that, he's in a full aero position, getting as tight and low on the bike as he can, and then just, keeping a super steady power. He's not gonna sprint up the hills. He's not going to slow down in the corners. He's going to take those corners as wide as he can to even pedal through them, just in order to keep that pace high. Because one thing that, one big reason why a lot of breakaways don't succeed is that the group behind sort of yo-yos, and they sort of rubber band a little bit, and they speed up, or someone tries to like bridge and then they catch them and then it slows the whole group down, or a team gets on the front and puts in a little bit of an effort, but then another team doesn't come and help them out, so that slows it down. And so there's just this kind of like back.
I gotta stop you for a second. Have you ever legitimately worn one of those cycling hats?
Yeah, probably. I mean, under my helmet for sure.
Okay, but like as a fashion statement,
no,
like no. Simon was like,
I look like a freaking goon when I wear those.
Dude, so. Some people can pull them off.
Yeah, I can't.
Like look at Simon up in the top left. I mean, he doesn't look that bad, but dude, that's the worst design of hat. Just as the hat in general, not like the artwork.
I think it has a utility. I think it has a utility when it's raining. You flip up the little thing, it keeps the rain out of your eyes. But yeah, I don't think that it's something that you want to wear just around town, out to the clubs. That's not what it's all about.
Right. So is that Orica Green Edge on the front right now? The green and slightly yellow.
Yeah.
Right. Because they've got Caleb Ewan. They want to get him to the finish, but they don't want to catch this guy that's off the front. They don't want to catch him too soon, because as soon as you catch the break and there is then no break up the road, what happens at that point?
Yeah, it's going to be a counter. So another team or another guy is going to immediately counter that move, because the chase is exhausting and it's tiring. And so then someone that's been resting up will launch again as soon as they catch him, so that he has a better chance of getting away, because then they have to start chasing again. And some of the teams will be like, nah, man, like we just finished chasing. We don't want to start chasing again. And so that's the danger. And yeah, so I mean that's kind of what I was talking about earlier, is these teams are just so dialed, and they have their lead out and their chasing just perfected. I mean, you can see Caleb Ewan there. You can't see him now because he's so freaking small, but he has the little yellow arms because he's like the Australian national champion. So he's just perfectly tucked in there. And now another team is kind of moving up to help the chase. But basically what happens is they're going to have it completely dialed. So they'll know exactly how hard, how fast to go in the chase in order to catch him at the exact moment that they want to start their lead out. And so by being on the front, they're at the front. They're right there. They don't have to move up. And that's why Caleb Ewan is in like 5th position. You know, he's not going to get on the front, but he's protected by his team. He's up in the front. He doesn't have to move up and waste that energy to get up for the sprint. And so now this guy's getting caught, and so they caught him pretty quickly. But
dude, he had he had like a 30-second gap, and then within one lap.
So
gone.
yeah, I mean, they only have a few laps left. So now, you know, I think now Orica is like, okay, now we're gonna get into controlling this race a bit more, because at this point in the race, they're going so fast that it's going to be unlikely that another guy is going to be able to make an attack hard enough to get off the front. And I would be surprised to see someone get another break in this short of time, because I mean, you see the giant Alpecin team, you see Garmin there, you see Orica, you see these big teams vying for the front right now for that real estate to get their guy, you know, in the best position possible to deliver him to the line. And so, you know, Orica is just killing it. I mean, Caleb Ewan's in 3rd place right now, just chilling behind his teammates in the perfect position. He's out of danger in case there's any crashes, and he, you know, doesn't have to move up.
But so what is the 3rd wheel versus like, say, 15th wheel, right? I mean, he's still kind of pushing wind. I mean, right? I mean, he is right behind someone. But if he's only like 1-1-1, right, versus the guy who's like buried and he's got guys surrounding him, isn't he still like putting out more energy than someone who's like Peter Sagan's probably like totally covered?
Yeah, but at this point, it's worth it because his team is up there, and so, you know, he's very smart, and so see, he's kind of tucking in there. But again, when you're at this speed of the race, when you're in 15th place, it's going to be near impossible to get up, to move up to the front, and so you're going to have to sort of use more, you know, acute energy in the sprint to sort of make that up. But, you know, obviously a lot can change in a couple laps. So
talk about the amateur side of that. In 15th wheel in the amateurs,
oh yeah,
necessarily is not. I mean, that's not.
No
sometimes
problem.
You can hang out 15th wheel and in 2 turns come around the whole pack just because of the pace.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's a big difference. I mean, because a lot of amateur races, there's a lot of cat and mouse. There's a lot of looking around in the final stages of the race, and so the pace does slow up and slow down and speed up a lot. You know, in the amateur race, but in this race, these guys are going full gas now because
I mean, you look at them and you kind of think, yeah, they're going hard, but they are, like you said, there's only maybe 5 or 6 guys that are legitimately racing this. So that guy on the front is going full gas. I mean, it might as well just be sprinting. I mean, the only difference is that he's seated. And so
that's
this guy
Stannard, I think. Yeah, he's a beast.
Those guys, they have no ambition to even get to the finish line, right?
No, like after this guy's turn, he's probably going to just cruise back and just roll it in because he's just going to blow himself up.
But so that's a huge difference between amateurs and pros is, again, these guys who will put in an effort that is so strong and so crazy because they don't even care about finishing, as of where, you know, sometimes breaks will have a better chance of succeeding in the amateurs than they do in the pros because the guys are trying to make sure to have the energy for the finish. Yeah. So no one really wants to go to the front and drill it, especially if there's, you know, 20 different teams in the pack, and they're all racing for themselves. You're just going to get guys going, no, you pull, no, you pull, no, you pull. And then so going, like, loop it all the way back, like making those opportunities, taking those opportunities.
Exactly.
And, you know, I get a lot of heat on my YouTube channel. People watch my racing and they're like, dude, you attack way too much. You're always using efforts. Why don't you just sit in? And for one, I can't sprint. And so it doesn't matter, dude. If I sat in and it came down to
so just
sprint,
to note, that guy just peeled off that Sky guy, and look, he's just soft pedaling now. He's done. He's just completely done. He's gonna like roll in, a minute or two back because now it's the final lap. So the next guy in this team, Sky Train, is taking over, and it'll just that's how the lead out works. But that's a huge key difference. So yeah, anyway, keep going.
Yeah, totally. Man, those guys. And then look at Katusha trying to
Yep.
come up and fight. But you
Ooh-wee. That's
jeez,
a crazy turn right there.
dude, and they take up the entire road, right? They
Yeah.
just don't even hit their brakes. They
No.
just
You hit your
just
brakes, you
hit.
lose like 10 positions.
Oh, for sure. Just super slow-mo right there. But I forgot what I was
We were
talking
just
about.
talking about how you get some flack for attacking a lot.
Oh, so yeah, so it's like, man, you should just sit in and hang out and wait for the sprint. But I just don't have a good sprint on me. And so even if I do wait, I mean, racing for top five is different than racing for the win. And I could probably get better results if I just sat in, and I could probably get, top tens, top fives, depending on the races, which is cool. I mean, I might be able to get a third if I really like, if third was what I was going for, but I want to win, and so I
Yeah.
want to play to my strengths. I'm not going to win when it comes to a full on pack sprint. It's just not how my motor's set up. It's not how my legs are set up. It's just not there. So I'm trying to like take those opportunities to make those breaks and to
Yeah,
make
exactly.
that situation where I have an actual chance to win. If it's a breakaway of breakaway riders, okay, well then now I kind of have something to do there. Like I might be able to sprint. I know one time, I the last time that I got close to a win, which is, man, I've been smoked so many times. So there was a Omnium, and our team cleaned up. I mean, it was just almost embarrassing. The first race, the circuit race, we went 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? We were in a breakaway, all four of us.
Hmm.
Like, when do you get four
Yeah.
teammates in a breakaway together? But it was just, it was so funny because the race, like, um, we sent one guy up with another team, and then I bridged to that, and then another guy bridged to that, so we had 4-on-1, and then we just destroyed that guy because we sent one off the road at a time. So right, so like there's this one guy sitting in a team of four, and then it's like Ryan goes,
Yeah.
and then Tony bridges to Ryan, and then Chaz just bridges to them, and then it's like me and this one guy, and then I bridge away from him. And anyway, so we were at the third race of this Omnium, and we are in almost the same situation. We have three teammates.
Ooh.
Dude, they're just railing.
This is the
Three
final lap.
Okay. So I'll finish this really
Yeah.
quick. So we had three teammates, one other guy, and on the last lap, I jumped off, and I was gonna win the race, and then my own teammate chased me down, and so I ended up getting third. It was so annoying, but that was the closest that I got to a win. But it was because we got into a break. Like I should have won that race. My own teammate chased me down, but it's all about those opportunities. So let's chat about this final lap. It is, how fast are they going right here?
They're probably going, I'm gonna guess, like upwards of 40 miles an hour, probably, at least.
So just sustaining 40 miles. Look at the guy in the red off. He's
Yeah.
like,
He's
dude,
trying to get the team up there, but he just can't.
you
He's
can't,
done.
dude. Yeah,
He's
holding
done.
40 miles an hour.
And I mean, look at Peter Sagan. He's in second place. He's moved himself up there, and that takes a lot of skill. I mean, and we all know Peter is a wizard within the peloton, but he is in second position, and I think that's a little bit too early, or too. I think he's a little bit too far up, because this guy, this Edix dude, is inevitably going to blow, like pretty much right there.
Yeah, see, now, he's left
Now
on
he's
the
out
front.
front.
Now he's like
Yeah,
just
and so
looking
he's
around.
like looking around, and so Orica has two or three guys there, and he dives
God.
that corner. Holy shit!
Oh
And
my
then
God.
so then Caleb is like third or fourth now, and has a couple guys in front of him that can deliver him a little bit closer to the line. So they're sprinting full gas. Like this guy on Orica is just in the box, fully sprinting, peels off, delivers number two. Peter is on Caleb's wheel, which is not a good place to be if you're Caleb. But look at Caleb, dude.
Well,
look
Caleb
how low he
has
gets.
0.
Look how low he gets. Boom. Nothing.
Oh my goodness. Okay, but so 2 caveats. 1, Caleb has 0 draft.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
What draft are you getting on Caleb? Nothing. And 2, that finish wasn't flat. It was a little kicker.
Yeah.
And so someone had commented on the podcast that I did with Tony, and he was saying, train to your strengths. If you are a 125-pound dude, like, you're probably not going to be a sprinter. So maybe don't try to be a sprinter. Like, you've got way more advantages because you're naturally light. And then so someone said, well, but dude, Caleb Ewan is 135 pounds. And, so for one, he is kind of an anomaly. But that finish was literally, like, perfect for him, right? He is a sprinter, but then it's also an uphill kick. So his 135-pound frame.
Look at that.
God, look at him go, dude.
Little pocket rocket.
Dude. What kind of cadence is he pushing right
He's
there?
doing like 120 probably. But, well, so I think that the thing about, you talk about, being a sprinter versus a climber, and I think as an amateur racer, even in the 1, 2s, 3s and stuff, I think it's not necessarily that smart to like try and focus on like, oh, I'm going to be a climber. It's a big mistake I made racing, because I was like, I'm going to be a climber. And so I really focus on training, my 20-minute power-up climbs. But in the U.S., if you want to be a good bike racer, there's not a lot of opportunities to be like Chris Froome, Like, Chris Froome wouldn't really do that well in the U.S. because a lot of the races are crits. They are really punchy 5-minute power-focused races. And so I think one big piece of advice for people, especially in the 4s and 5s, is like, don't even think about that. Be focused on being a well-rounded rider, and then if you get to the higher levels, because you're going to do a lot better if you can be a more well-rounded rider. You find yourself in a breakaway and you can climb, you can time trial, you can sprint, work it all.
Yeah, I mean, dude, when you beat Peter Sagan, like, how dope is that? And so back to your thing, like, for sure, I kind of said, well, I want to be a climber, because I felt that was much more my thing, and I tried to get really light. But then there's just there's no races that like are, even have. I think the biggest climb that I did in my race career so far up to this point would be maybe 10 minutes, if that.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I could think it was a 9-minute effort or something like that. It's called Wildcat, and still, even, and then when there is a climbing race, then you get all the like legitimate climbers.
Yeah.
Adrian Costa, right? He's a NorCal racer. I mean, it's like, so you want to go to a
but he's not just a pure climber. The dude can time trial like a boss. So he can sprint, especially at the end of a climbing stage. I mean, and so he's a little bit more well-rounded than he may seem from the outside. But he is quickly developing into a stage racer, which, like a Chris Froome, or who, Chris Froome is not a pure climber. A pure climber is going to be someone like Roman Bardet, or, some of these.
Well, Nero Katana, right? Or however you say his
even
name.
Niro.
I mean, he is. I remember watching something about him, and he is so light that on the time trial he just cannot get up to speed.
Yeah.
Right. It's just like the way that his body is. There's not enough mass to push him. He can't produce that kind of power. And so, weighing 130 pounds, 120 pounds, makes you a great climber. But if you're trying to do something overall, it's pretty difficult to generate the kind of power that you need to be overall. But yeah, so I mean, just kind of, I don't know. I think that you should try to race every race the best you can, and kind of play the card you're dealt. So that was kind of cool.
That was really fun.
That
really
was neat.
Fun.
Kind of, watching that. It would be neat to do more. It would be cool if we did something similar to this for the Tour de France. and kind of just sort of chatted about the race as it goes on. Because there's a lot of people that don't even know how to get these races, right? They don't even know where to watch. I mean, I would assume that if you're listening to this on YouTube, then you probably already know how to find all the races. But it's crazy how many times I'll hit up my friends and I'm like, dude, you watch the stage? And they're like, no, how do I watch that stage?
Yeah.
Like, come on, man. So that would be neat to have that resource for people. But so before we conclude this, tell me about food for thought.
Thought for food.
Fuck, dude. I was literally thinking about it the entire podcast. I was like,
don't mess this up. Don't mess this up. Don't mess this up.
That's what I was. Thought for food. Thought for food. Thought for food. Thought for food. Tell us about what that is.
Yeah, so I mean that's a sort of a big reason actually why I have sort of stopped racing is this is sort of my new passion. And so exactly a year from this week, actually tomorrow, a year ago from now, me and my friend Aaron Stuber, who is a nurse here in Boulder, he's an ultra runner, a nurse. He has a 1.5-year-old daughter. He and I started a podcast, and we're both vegan, plant-based athletes. I was still bike racing at that time. I had a year left of college, and we were just really passionate about sort of talking about nutrition and lifestyle, and exercise and these things as sort of a whole package. It's not just about diet. It's not just about exercise, and how we can make the world a better place and be more compassionate and live in more alignment with our morals and values, but also still be badass athletes and crush on the bike, out on the trails, whatever it is you're into, and just do epic shit outside in the mountains, or even just be a good steward of the plant-based lifestyle. And so it sort of quickly morphed from the podcast. We have over 50 episodes. We interview academics, athletes, entrepreneurs kind of in this space. And we also dive deep into nutrition science, because I have a degree in physiology, and I'm getting my master's degree in applied nutrition right now. So we're kind of nerds on the science, but we also like to talk about food and then be done with it. Understand how it works and why you need it, but then move on and use it as fuel to do the cool stuff that you want to do. And so we have YouTube. I do fun little vlogs, Thought for Food TV on YouTube, and we're kind of shifting into a bunch of other different things.
So other than the best episode that you've ever done, which hosts yours truly, the Vegan Cyclist,
right?
What other episode, if someone was going to listen to one other episode than the one I'm on, which one would you say? Which one would you recommend? Like their first teaser into Thought for Food.
Yes, I mean, I'm going to guess a lot of your followers are cyclists or into cycling, and we have a few good episodes on that. One I would really highly recommend is for an interview, besides the Vegan Cyclist, obviously, is Daniel Bovalino. He's the founder and creator of Vegan Athletic Apparel, which is he's an Aussie, and he just has a really cool philosophy on cycling and on the vegan lifestyle, and highly recommend that. I also just interviewed Lachlan and Gus Morton, who Lachlan was actually in this race. He's on Dimension Data in the World Tour. He won Tour of Utah last year, and I had the awesome opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with them about their new film, Thereabouts 3.
No way, dude. How do I not know about this? Is it up?
It's not up yet, because I've been holding on to that episode until their new movie is released, which is releasing like next week. So it'll be dropping in the next week or so, depending on when you're listening to this. But it should be out by the end of January. Epic conversation. I've been so excited to share that one. I think people are really going to love it, and it'll really, if you haven't seen Thereabouts 1 or 2, go watch those films. They are phenomenal, and these two guys are just amazing cyclists and just doing really cool things. So, and then if
that is so awesome. The Thereabouts 1 is epic. You cannot find it. You can't find it on YouTube. I think it's all through Vimeo.
Yeah, but it's like $3 or $4 to watch.
Yeah.
So worth it.
I bought Thereabouts 2 I think it was, yeah, like $10 or something. And if I own it, so if you want it, hit me up. But so it is, man,
So they
it is
just came
so,
out. They just made a third one in Colombia, and I actually got to watch it over Christmas because my
oh, you're
yeah
so lucky.
yeah, and so it's so good, and it's just so cool. And so yeah, we had a whole conversation about that. We talked about Lachlan's struggle. He almost quit the sport because he sort of fell into this depression about cycling, and he got into the world tour at a very young age and struggled with it. And so we talked about that struggle and what it's been like for him to shift into being more mindful around cycling, and finding that passion for it again, and then shifting into back into the world tour. And it's a great timing, because this is Tour Down Under is
Well,
his first race back, and it's just perfect.
and so if you and so what happens is the very first one they talk about, dude, we're burnt out, we don't want to race anymore, him and his bro, and then they ride across Australia, just like no t-shirt, just like no helmet, just some bibs and a good time. And then number two, they had Taylor Finney and a couple other guys, and they rode through Colorado down to like Utah, dude. And they're like trekking through snow. And
Yeah, it's epic shit.
Taylor Finney was like wearing some flannel jacket, or he was wearing some kind of crazy jacket. And when I saw that, I was like, that looks so dope. And so then that's why I really like to wear just normal jackets on rides, like flannel jackets,
Oh
because
yeah.
dude, it looks super sick. But I can't believe you got to chat with him. And I would definitely be, I'm on the edge of my seat to hear that. How did you even get in touch with them? Are they out of Colorado right
Yeah, so
now?
they live in Boulder. They're from Boulder. I mean, they're originally from Australia, but their parents live here, and so they live in Boulder when they're just out here training. And so I just sort of hustled my way into it, and I got in contact via a family friend who's really good friends with their dad, and so we just set it up. I went and had a beer with them, and then we sat down the next night for a sweet conversation, and I filmed the first 15 minutes of that, and so I'm going to put that up on my YouTube channel as well, just to get a little teaser. So yeah, I'm super excited for that. And then if you're into plant-based nutrition, we have a ton of really cool episodes. We have like a What's the Deal series, so we do like what's the deal with protein, soy. We just did one on carbohydrates. It's like everything you need to know about the science behind carbohydrates, and just sort of ends the conversation on that kind of controversy. So yeah, we have a lot of really cool content, and
So
I love it.
where do you find this other than YouTube? Do you have a website?
Yeah, if you go to tfflifestyle.com, that you can find everything there. Thought for Food TV is the YouTube, and then you can find the podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, and a bunch of other different, whatever podcast app you use. Just type in Thought for Food podcast, and make sure it's thought for food, not food for thought. It's a play on words.
Yeah.
Um,
No, and I get it. I get it. I just, for whatever reason, keep thinking the other way is not right.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
the other way is the way. Awesome, man. Well, so last thing, what do you think about Peter Sagan's move to ride 100% glasses?
What do you mean? What's
I mean,
that?
he went from Oakley, and now he's riding the 100% glasses.
I've
You haven't
I've
seen him?
I mean, I saw those glasses today, but I've never even heard of that brand or that news story. I don't. I feel like I'm just like, what?
Dude, you need to look up the
All right.
picture of him ride 100%. So 100%, my son actually got sponsored on their moto goggles, which was pretty sweet.
Oh,
And then it
nice.
looks like they've now started getting into cycling. But I don't know, dude. I mean, those glasses look pretty pretty cool. I don't know. He's always like the trendsetter, right? So
Yeah,
that's another thing. You want to talk about pros versus amateurs? Pros, dude, when they're cool, what it doesn't matter what they wear.
yeah,
You're just like, oh, that's so dope. And then you try to wear it, and you're like, dang
exactly. I mean,
it.
look at Lachlan Morton and Taylor Finney and stuff. Like they're wearing like bucket hats and you know rugby shirts while they're riding, and it's like, oh my god, that's so cool. But then like, obviously, you and I can't pull that off. Like, I mean, you rock the flannel.
Yeah, I want to do like a special limited edition flannel kit. I like have it fully designed, and it's super understated. Like it's not overly crazy, but anyway, I don't know. I mean, my Pac stuff. I love the way Pac looks.
Yeah.
For me, that's like, I don't know. It sort of kind of separates you from being that typical cyclist
Yeah.
look, you know. And Peter Sagan's always kind of been like, he's just this trendsetter, dude. And he makes things so cool. One last thing I want to say is that Cranked Naturals, you know, they gave me a coupon code for 30% off, and they have like great protein powder, like hemp protein powder, which is just super delicious. They have this lemonade like drink mix that's just off the chains. So if anyone's trying to, because this is a question I get a lot, is, hey, I'd like to be more plant-based, but how do I, you know, what post-ride fuel do you take in? You know, how do you get your protein in afterwards? You know, if you're trying to supplement chocolate milk, because that's like a big thing for cyclists. I don't. I mean, there's a ton of brands out there, but 30% off is pretty good. So if you use the coupon code vegan, then Cranked Naturals will hook you up with that. So do you have any promotions or anything that you have worked out, or anything that you'd like to share?
No, I mean, just you know, just keep rocking the plant-based cycling lifestyle, and just be fully aware that you can do it. It's, you know, nothing's holding you back. So, but anyway, I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much, man. This was so fun. I'd love to do it again. I miss talking cycling. I'm so used to talking about plants and you know, nutrition and stuff, and it's really fun to talk about cycling and to have. I really like this format, so I really appreciate you inviting me on.
Yeah, man. Well, you've got the radio voice.
I know.
Right?
My voice is pretty deep and sexy. I will admit it.
It's and you're just you're a natural speaker. When I did the podcast with you, when I got off, I told my wife, I was like, damn, he's smooth. You're good, you know. So I think that your podcast is going to flourish, and we live in this time of like, I don't know, man. Podcasts, just everyone wants them. They're in high demand,
Yeah.
and so if you do a half decent job of putting together some good content, you know, you should be successful. And honestly, the fact that you got to talk to the Morton Bros, like, dude, I'm so jelly on that. That's phenomenal. So
Yeah.
fantastic, man. Well, thanks guys for listening in. This was Racecast episode 6. Comment and hey, check out Thought for Food.
Yeah, nice job.
There we go. Check out Thought for Food. I'll have it all posted in the comments. As always, guys, vegan cyclist. Yeah.
Yeah.